The fight over government funding is continuing, well, right now. The House opened a rare Saturday session this morning to vote on giving furloughed federal workers back pay and restoring funding to more chunks of the government. House Republicans earlier this week already voted to restore funding to allow the National Institutes of Health to continue clinical trials, to reopen national parks, and to allow the District of Columbia to continue operations. The democratically controlled Senate has refused to take up the piecemeal funding bills. The Democrats are also attempting to use a bit of procedural trickery to force the House to vote on a clean bill that would fund the government at sequester levels without any strings. NBC News correspondent Luke Russert joins me from Capitol Hill with the latest. Good morning, Luke.
Good morning, Professor. How are you?
Pretty good. So I always work on Saturday mornings, but but you guys are at work. You know, what do you think will actually happen today? I just heard from my guest Benjy. He doesn't even think we're going to get a vote on a clean CR this week. So what are they up to this weekend?
So it's a continuation of this House Republican strategy to put forward a lot of piecemeal bills to really try and put Democrats on their heels as being against popular functions of government. This is really about a messaging more than anything else. Republicans will tell you they're trying to keep vital aspects of government open, but more so it's really made to put Democrats on their heels. They can run ads against Democrats in competitive districts on these types of things in 2014. It also buys John Boehner some time to try and figure out how he's going to get out of the hole that Ted Cruz has dug for the House GOP conference. As what they're doing today exactly, they're going to vote on this bill for federal workers to get their pay back after they've been furloughed. The White House says they actually won't veto this one, so there's a good chance this one could become law. And that's very significant because there is a lot of anxiety amongst federal workers that thought of the appetite for cutting spending from the Tea Party Republicans that they would not pass something like this. So this is actually something where the House GOP leadership, the old establishment guard, if you will, has moved something, and they've gotten their more conservative brethren to follow along. They're also going to be voting on a bill that allows furloughed chaplains to practice religion on Army bases. This was an issue that got a lot of traction in the conservative blogosphere. There's some concern from Catholic priests who had been furloughed and they were contracted to serve that if they went back on their base, they could be arrested for saying Mass. This bill's moving forward, so that would not happen. So, as I said, messaging war, putting Democrats back on their heels. But, guys, I will say this. President Obama and the Senate Democrats have said they will really stop a lot of these. So it is significant to see the federal workers' back pay go forward. So, other than that, don't expect too many of these to move all the way to the president's desk. So
let me just ask you just one question about that. So on the one hand, it certainly makes perfect sense to me for the White House to say, okay, this one is important. So once we finally do come to an agreement, we get this back pay. But is it also an opening? I mean, part of what the administration has done at this point is a pretty hard line about the refusal to negotiate. Does this mean that we'll start seeing some of the piecemeal stuff happening?
I don't think so, because I think where you've seen the administration willing to negotiate is when it comes to actual pay for individuals and their livelihood. So you saw them move on the money for troops. You're going to see them move on money for federal workers. If this becomes law, federal workers who are furloughed, they all breathe a lot easier. Because I got to tell you, just a few days ago, this was no guarantee. It cost them. I spoke to some Republicans and said, why should we pay federal workers for not doing their job? They had a quote-unquote vacation. So this is something I think the administration wants to take and file away and get it done quickly.
Luke, thanks so much for that update. I think it's a really useful one. Thanks, and have a good day working there on Saturday.
Nowhere else I'd rather be.
So let me come on back out to the panel on this question, especially on this question about pay. We're just talking about the North Carolina Republican who she said, this is Congresswoman Elder says, I need my paycheck. That's the bottom line. I understand that there may be some other members who are deferring their checks, and I think that's admirable, but I'm not in that position. That's Representative Renee Elmers out of North Carolina. I was like, what do you think is happening as a result of the government shutdown here?
Yeah, and this is getting into a recurring issue, which is a lot of these debates are about the Congress themselves. For example, the big Republican demand right now is to slash their own staffers' health benefits, which has led to a lot of consternation. There is Harry Reid staff leaked all these emails about how John Boehner was trying to prevent that because it's his own staff, it's his own health care. So you see this with the pay too. They're talking about cutting federal workers' pay, but then it gets very difficult when you're talking about your own. It's just the nature of this kind of shutdown.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I should disclose right now that my wife works for the federal government with the Voice of America, which is probably having an awful time right now explaining this to the rest of the world. Linda is going into work. And so not only do I support what they're doing today in the House of Representatives, but I think that the federal workers who do work should get double pay. Don't you think?
Right.
They're being a little facetious.
I mean, I think people don't really understand that essential workers are actually at work and not getting paid for it. Like when the whole thing went down with the woman at outside the Capitol building. Yeah. Those Capitol police officers are working without pay. Yes. How do we let this happen? And the Republicans are getting away with it, except when it comes to them.
But I think they're getting away with it to a point, because you know the poll numbers you put up from that CBS poll, in that same poll, and also when we look at the polling in this situation, it often depends on the wording. But in that same poll, 72% of the public said they did not agree with the overall idea of shutting down the government over Obamacare. So I do think as this drags on, people are wise to what is happening. They get it.
And yet I wonder if because I think the first impulse is to say, oh man, they are making a mess of this. This is worse than drawing those red lines around Syria and chemical weapons, right? Cruz has put Boehner in a hole. But then the digging out of the hole, right? I never underestimate the GOP on this, is now they can say President Obama doesn't like kids with cancer because, they're not, the Senate is not willing to pass this sort of piecemeal. You've got Newt Gingrich, right? Newt Gingrich has said he will personally pay to restore the electricity for Pandacam, so that we can have Pandacam, right? So President Obama hates kids with cancer, but Newt Gingrich loves pandas and will bring them back to you.
Right. It's now a PR campaign, but at the end of the day, Boehner he's put himself in a pickle, right? He doesn't have an exit strategy. Yeah. He needs and his other problem is that those insurrectionists, the Tea Party, we now have a 2.5-party system. We've got Democrats, Republicans, and we've got a Tea Party. Yep. And the Tea Party can now do a whole lot more takeovers running up until the 2014 election cycle to show their muscle within the Republican Party.
Right, because a clean CR at this point is still just sequester level funding, and it's still just, for about 6 weeks, right? I mean, we're not even talking about a long-term solution. So stay right there. We've got a little bit more on exactly this, and I want to dig in, because I am interested in your point about Capitol workers and other Capitol police who were working without pay. So let's talk a little bit more about this when we come back.